You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Health Podcast. I have Rana Gujral. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, investor, and the CEO of Behavioral Signals, the enterprise software company that delivers an emotion AI engine that introduces emotional intelligence into speech recognition technology. And Rana's been awarded the Entrepreneur of the Month by CIO Magazine and U.S. China Pioneer Award by IEIE. He's been listed amongst the top 10 entrepreneurs to follow in 2017 by the Huffington Post. He's been a featured speaker at the World Government Summit in Dubai, Silicon Valley Smart Future Summit, and the IEIE in New York. He's a contributing columnist for TechCrunch and Forbes. So great to have you. I appreciate it, Rana. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Richard. That's quite an introduction. I appreciate it. And it's a sincere pleasure to be part of this. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think I need to work on my personal credentials because I was such a good one, but good for you.
Come on.
But, so tell me about the why create an emotional or an AI that understands emotional context of what you say. I mean, it's probably obvious, but tell me how you came to this realization.
That's a really powerful question. I don't think I've been asked that many times often, which is why do this and why create an emotion AI? What I want to do is I want to answer this by quoting one of the legends in the space of AI, one of the founding fathers of AI, Marvin Minsky, because he was once asked about machine emotions, and he said, the question is not whether intelligent machines can have any emotions, but whether machines can be intelligent without any emotions. And so I personally feel that it is an essential piece of artificial intelligence in general, but is also an essential piece of voice interactions. And, we should talk a little bit more about voice interactions. I know you have a specific interest in that area. It's an area that has fascinated the field of AI over the last decade or so. But if you think about sort of how things have progressed, just a few years ago, and I'd say not too far back, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, aspects such as NLP were considered cutting edge. This was experimental and bleeding edge stuff. Fast forward into 2019 today, NLP, or just sort of the part of what is being said and translating the actual speech into words accurately, is state of the art. It's as accurate as it needs to be. It's even more accurate than potentially a human can achieve. And so with that, and if you consider interacting through voice is the most fundamental intrinsic part of it's almost like an innate human reaction. So a baby can communicate through voice, and even though there's still language barriers, they don't understand how to say certain words, and an adult can understand a baby. And that's why voice is so powerful, and that's why voice is even more powerful than, say, touch in terms of how we want to interact with other people or devices or for whatever. But if you think about voice interaction, one of the fundamental aspects of voice or interactions itself is communicating intent, or if I'm listening to you as another human, trying to connect with you and relate with you and understand your state of the mind. That's what makes those conversations more real, not just not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it, or not just what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. So it's the combination of what plus how that makes that conversation impactful, real, and meaningful. And I think that's been missing. That's been missing, for a long time. And a lot of progress has been made on voice interactions and other aspects of AI, but emotions eluded that whole equation. And that's where we add value. We're looking to fill in that gap, not just from a perspective of specific KPIs into certain verticals, but in general. So I think I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, and I love that we're playing in that space and we're leading that charge.
Well, yeah, I was thinking a few things as you were talking. So some people, or a lot of people, I think, that through email they always say, "Oh, you can't feel the emotional content of something," and through text certainly. So things get misinterpreted a lot. Things could feel harsh by what someone says in a text or an email, and maybe they don't mean that at all. So I'm sure it's led to countless misunderstandings. And then I think about also the different types of learners, auditory, kinesthetic, visual, and a lot of the world's geared towards visual learners, but there are people that are very auditory like me and many others. And, you want to hear, like you said, people's voices and how things sound instead of just the text version of it. So I definitely agree that there's a lot to be desired in this arena,
Yeah, I mean, let me add one more thing to what you just said. The question is why voice, right? So that's a question we do get asked a lot, which is, great, emotion AI sounds fascinating, but why voice? Why? Because there's other ways we communicate emotions. We communicate emotions through facial expressions, through body language, through other potential means of communicating intent. But the question why voice is a powerful question. And according to a recent Yale study, our sense of hearing may be even stronger than sight when it comes to accurately detecting emotions. So what that means is, we become more accurate when we hear someone's voice than when we look only at their facial expressions or see their face and hear their voice. And this was a study which was recently done by Michael Cross, Yale University psychologist. And he tested this very simple hypothesis. He basically took a video file where there's audio and video, and he turned the video off, and he tried to measure emotion simply on the audio, and he benchmarked it, and he gave it a score. Then he turned the video on with the expectation that now that you have additional clues, you have the audio, but also have the visual clues because you can look at the facial expressions, and let's tune into those attributes as well. The actual read of emotion should go higher. But what he discovered is that actually it went down, and that was very intriguing. So that kind of led to the study. And the reason why that happens is we as humans are actually fairly adept in masking our emotions through our facial expressions. We've been taught to look a certain way and act a certain way, and the more evolved of us, especially the corporate, we can also manage our body language well. But we suck at masking our emotions through our voice. The way I feel and how I feel comes through my voice in intonations, no matter how hard I try to hide it. And this was the discovery. And for us, that's a resounding, validation, because we knew this on day one. Our founders have done a lot of research in this area in behavioral science and emotion, and we bet on voice, and it turned out to be that voice only is vastly superior to voice plus visual, or visual only. And so, that again brings a lot more credit to emotions and the role it plays into voice interactions, and the role voice interactions play in communicating emotions, vice versa.
Yeah, I've even seen, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I can tell you, someone that has a good voice and speaks well makes me like the book. But no matter how interesting the book, if the person's boring or their voice is bad, I can't listen. It's horrible, And
exactly.
There's text to speech engines, but it sounds like a robot. No one wants to really listen to a robot. So, emotion is like completely intertwined with voice. So if you have voice with no emotion, it kind of falls flat. So I guess you must have both And in order to read what someone's saying and not miss out on a lot of levels, you have to understand the emotion in the voice. Otherwise, you're going to miss out a lot, or it can be totally misconstrued.
Totally. So what you just said right now, like you said, nobody wants to talk to a robot, and the reason they're being is, let's take an example. Let's take Alexa, because everyone knows about Alexa, or Cortana, or Siri for that matter. But Alexa, most people know. After tons of research, hundreds of millions of dollars spent into building those Alexa-like interactions. Today, how does that interaction look like? So, for example, if I ask you a question and say, Richard, would you like to do this? And you respond to me with a very sarcastic sure. I'm listening to the word sure. I know what that means, but I'm getting the sarcasm. I'm listening to the tone, and I know you really don't mean that. And so my natural response would be, oh, maybe now is not a good time, right? And so how does that simple one snippet interaction looks like today with Alexa? If Alexa asks you to do something and you respond back with that sarcasm, she has no clue. I mean, she responds back with, okay, great, let's do it. So, and that's why people don't want to interact with robots, or for that matter, inanimate human systems, because they are not relatable, because emotions are what makes a human and a human conversation more relatable. And we today can make that happen. Possible. It's today. It's not in research. It's not something that we're working on that's going to be available 5 years from now. We have that capability. We're applying that capability into a variety of different specific business use cases, and we can make Alexa more emotionally aware, which would mean that she'll be more relatable, and that would mean we'll be able to talk to Alexa more, and Alexa would be more useful. And so I think that applies to any human to machine interaction, or I should say not necessarily machine, but inanimate system interaction. It could be Alexa Google-like system, or it could be a robot, which is a caregiver robot inside your home, trained to look after seniors, or it could be a retail assistant, or it could be a virtualized ordering kiosk at McDonald's, where you speak to it and it understands your order, it suggests you other options. Any system that you're interacting with through voice, which is not a human, would need a capability to be more human-like.
So how would this work? How would you program into an AI system the ability to recognize emotions? I mean, there's certain numbers of emotions that you would handle at first, or there's probably infinite ones, and intonations and stresses and accents and things like that. So it seems like a hard thing to quantify.
Yeah. So our core capabilities can be sort of roughly put in three buckets. The most, the most obvious aspects of it is tenets of essentials of speech synthesis, which is, there's a conversation that's happening, trying to figure out who's speaking when, who's speaking fast, who's speaking slow, who's cutting someone off, speech overlap, the speech listening ratios, gaps, et cetera, even gender, right? And all those are the aspects of interactions and speech synthesis. Now, the other aspect is the what part, which is what is being said. So you're saying something, can I actually translate that into actual words? And that's where the NLP comes into play, and we have our own homegrown NLP that we built to fine-tune towards this capability. But our core offering, our secret sauce, is the how part, which is how it is being said. So that's where we cue into a variety of different behavioral and emotional signals, such as arousal, politeness, anger, happiness, sadness, agitation, empathy, rapport, engagement, and all of those things we cue on, and we look at those emotions, we look at behaviors or behavioral signals emerging from those emotions, and we even go as far as predict intent. And that's actually one of our key offerings, is our intent prediction engine. We can predict with a very high level of accuracy if debt holder is going to pay the debts or not pay. They're saying something, but do they really mean it? Or if you are in a conversation with a client who you're trying to sell something, we can predict if the person's going to buy or not going to buy. And so the propensity to pay and propensity to buy prediction prediction questions. So we could do all of that, and those are the different things we do, and those are the different things we offer. Now, how do we do that? Years of research. The tech is founded out of USC, where a lot of research has been done. That's where our founders worked and researched from the sales labs and the behavioral lab. We focus primarily on intonations, so it's somewhat language agnostic, but it's a combination of linguistics and intonations. But vast majority of our focus is in intonations, which is the emphasis on words and how certain things are being said. And so as a result, the capabilities are largely portable to any language, accent agnostics, etc.
So what's an interaction look like? Do you have any models set up, or how far along is this project?
Yeah, we have a variety of capabilities in place today commercially. Our core offering can be thought of as a vertical agnostic platform offering. So think of ourselves as a TensorFlow-like offering on top of which other capabilities and specific products can be built. We sell into a variety of different verticals, so like inside sales and contact centers, BPOs. There we go after traditional KPIs such as propensity to pay and buy, customer satisfaction, call success, agent customer matching, et cetera. When we apply the tech into health tech, so we have a client using our technology, and they deal with a platform that manages patients with depression. So they use the technology to predict a propensity for suicidal behavior. Very different use case than, say, managing agent engagement or matching the right agent with the right customer. We talked about these use cases. We also apply the technology into virtual assistants and robots. So we're working with a few players that are building social robots or companion robots. And our goal there is to make that robot more empathetic and more emotionally aware, and at the end be more useful and be more relatable. So all those use cases we apply into today. I mean, those are the different engagements that we have with various customers at this point.
So what has been have you been able to get really good fidelity on emotions and voice? Does it depend on the person's emotional state or the context? Like, what are some of the details that make this either easy to do or incredibly difficult to do?
It is very hard. This is not an easy science. This is certainly work in progress in terms of applying that to, if you think about it, applying emotion recognition science to a conversation that is in a specific domain where the context is largely contained and understood, which, like, for example, an agent customer conversation, or maybe a conversation between a debt collector and debt holder, where the calls are high quality, properly recorded, or being assembled with professional equipment, and you have proper annotations and labeling in place, you get a very, very high level of accuracy. Now, when you say that, could you generally just sense emotions of a random conversation happening in a cafeteria? That's very hard. There's a lot of noise tenants to it because you're focusing on intonations, but you're getting a lot of false alerts. So those are the things which are sort of more of a stretch goal for us, which is, can we eventually apply the capabilities into general conversational AI? Those are the areas which we are researching on. Those are the noise, signal reduction and other aspects of working with data that may not be optimal or may not be super high quality. Those are the things which are sort of more in the future. But a lot of these other conversations, a lot of these other interactions in a business setting, we're able to achieve a fairly good level of accuracy. Definitely adequate enough for businesses to build specific value propositions on.
So what would happen in an interaction with a customer service person if you could hear the person calling in is getting frustrated, if they're getting angry, if they're, frustrated or angry? Would you try to help that person differently, or did some systems be used to kind of I don't know, I guess punish someone, let's say if they're cursed or if they're really angry. I mean, I can see this going both ways.
Yeah. So, those actions are obviously driven and determined by the specific business context and business use cases that a customer is aiming to go after or solve for. Now, like for example, here's a specific offering that speaks to what the use case you just said, which is sort of an agent helper or a real-time notification engine. So imagine a scenario where an agent's speaking with a client, and it's a live call, and this engine is running in the back. Our emotion AI engine is running in the back, listening to the conversation and processing the conversation real time, parsing it from an NLP aspect, but also parsing it from a diarization perspective, which is who's speaking when, and deducing signals, all kinds of emotions and behavioral signals. And so it's projecting to the user. Imagine a notification that pops up on the agent's dashboard and say, hey, speak faster, or speak slower, or you sound angry, or the client sounds angry. And those are the signals that are chosen to be presented to the agent based on what the partner solution feels is valuable. And how the agent reacts to it, it obviously depends on what outcome you're trying to achieve. So, but when you're looking at very specific prediction questions like propensity to pay or propensity to buy, you're looking at a scenario where you have the engine analyze the conversation. You control the conversation as an agent, and at the end of the conversation, when you feel you're ready to wrap up, you ask the engine to process it, and engine processes it real time and comes back with an assessment. It's a binary question: is this person going to pay or not going to pay? Because once I know, and we can predict that with over 82% accuracy. Once I know as an agent if this person is not going to pay, then I don't have to continue to work on that account. I could potentially, sell that deal to maybe a third-party agent or a third-party company for the debt collection. Or if I get the signal the person's going to pay, then maybe I'll try out other means to extract that payment. And the similar situations for propensity to buy. And so I'm saying those situations, those actions are really driven by the specific business context. And now we don't build those products. We build the engine. We work with partners who are specifically building call center platforms, and they're specifically building debt collection agent platforms. And again, on the health tech side, there are people who are the companies who are building specific platforms that cater to the specific audience. We're sort of behind the scenes. We're the engine that gets absorbed inside their overall platform offering, working behind the scenes to analyze emotions. Does that make sense?
So you're saying that using the emotional, I'm just calling a meter, for lack of a crude word, but you're trying to answer the question, let's say in a debt collection call, will they pay or not pay? And if it goes to the scale where it looks like the person's not going to pay because of what they're saying in the emotional content, then what would happen with that call? Would you try to rescue it, or is it just referred to a third-party debt collector, or what would happen, for instance?
Yeah, it's exactly. All those options and possibilities are then now available to that company and to that debt collection agent, to be more specific, in terms of how to react to this learning, which was not possible earlier. Because previously, you'd follow, like typical companies would follow a process of trying to navigate conversations up to a certain period of time, and then beyond that period of time, you would just blindly do the cutoff and hand those accounts to somebody else. Now, if you have the ability to predict future and or predict intent, then you would react differently. Now, the point I was trying to make earlier is even in that agent notification engine. What you do with those learnings, which is you just discovered that as soon as I mentioned price, the client's response has turned to be completely disengaged or maybe even angry. Then you have an ability to react to it in a certain way in order to salvage that deal. But we don't necessarily make those decisions. Our core is to offer those capabilities. In terms of what you do with those capabilities and how you build that into your experience would be sort of dependent on the platform providers that we work with, or basically our clients and our customers.
So if you have an agent, you wouldn't have to listen to all their calls to know that this agent, for some reason, is getting 35% angry responses and has a low collection rate, and this agent has only 20% negative and has a much higher collection rate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's actually another core offering which we work towards, which is what we call an audit engine. And so today, actually, so what you're referring to is a mega use case. And so, for example, if you think about it, you've been on a call with a bank or an insurance company, for that matter, any company where you've been on a call with a customer service agent, and that call is being recorded because you get that message. The question is, what happens to the recorded calls? Hundreds of thousands of calls, those are being recorded for the purposes of compliance and adherence. What happens to it? Now, typically, there's an audit. There's an audit to monitor compliance, but that audit is entirely random. So you have someone picking out a random set of calls from a certain department or a certain group of people, and have someone listen through those calls to monitor compliance and adherence, and to see if the job's being done right or the agent's being trained properly. Now, with a technology like ours, what you could do is you could have every call that gets recorded be analyzed and parsed and categorized, for a lack of simplicity, as a red call or a green call. Red call being problematic and green call being really good. Now you could sort that based on departments. You could sort that based on agents. You can find agents with the most red calls. You can find agents with the most green calls. And eventually you could pick certain calls by certain people in certain departments and deep dive into it to analyze why those calls are red or green, and have a much more advanced, much more sophisticated audit process, which is a game changer and a huge competitive edge for a financial company, or for that matter, any company that requires a regulation. And so those are the capabilities we can make possible, and certainly they're available today.
Yeah, what percentage of calls do you think are actually monitored or looked at or used for analytics in a call center? I know it varies, but ballpark.
I don't really know the actual percentage, but I have to say it's a very, very small percentage, just simply because it's a manual task. It's more of a stick approach than a carrot approach. And so it's just, there's a chance that your call can be monitored, but the fact that an agent is talking to hundreds of clients a day, and there are hundreds and thousands of agents online from a typical call center, the percentage of the calls that actually get monitored is very low. Now, over the years, there have been other technologies in play, especially around the NLP and the linguistic side, where you're parsing the conversation into the actual words, and you're looking for certain keywords that shouldn't be said, and you're queuing in for curse words and queuing in for certain other specific keywords, like, hey, did you ask for social security where you shouldn't have asked for it? And those triggers and those alerts that come into place, but it's still half-baked, it's still inadequate. What you don't get is, if that call was a really good call from an engagement perspective, and if it's not, then what happened? What led to it? NLP doesn't catch that. It's just simply going to catch for certain specific keywords. So the actual calls that get analyzed for really good training metrics is very low. I'd say maybe in single digits, but then I'd be guessing.
Okay. Yeah, I can see a lot could be gleaned from this. If you're using non-native speakers, evaluating their efficacy to see if it's if it's helping you or hurting you. Maybe it's they're lower cost, but the collection rate is bottomed out ever since you started using them, for instance. I mean, I guess there's a lot hidden in the world of voice and emotions that you're talking about uncovering.
A lot. I mean, let me give you an example. Some of my favorite examples, because it made a profound impression on me. When I was looking at this technology, I was looking at certain calls which were sort of categorized as red and green, and I was curious to see, okay, what kind of learnings can you make from that? So I just randomly picked a call that was marked as a red call, and I listened to some of the aspects of the conversation. So it was essentially a conversation between an agent, a young agent, someone very new on the job, and she was recently trained, and a client that was a very happy client. So the client actually called them to communicate that they're very happy with the business and they're doing a lot of repeated work, but they have to pay periodically using credit card every time they order service. And they were hoping that a recurring billing could be set up because they don't have enough credit cards in the company. And, so it's a happy call because here's a client calling in, satisfied and wanting to do more. Now, the agent, if you listen to that call, does everything right. I mean, she says the right things. She's very polite, but there's obvious that something's happening there because she's completely, disengaged. And she's just not emotionally there. And maybe it was a personal thing or whatever happened, but you could see how she brought the mood down of the client eventually. And that call didn't end well. And the client, in fact, is trying hard to ramp up the emotion, but then the person again brings it down. And so, I was curious to see what happened in that call. So we looked into that and we realized that that agent left about 4 to 5 weeks after and left the job after thousands of dollars had been spent on her training, and she just left the job. So those are the things which are impossible to catch unless you have a capability like what we deliver to, because you simply can't, NLP can't catch it unless you're listening to every call. And the impact on the business, not only by impacting a paying client, but also by losing a resource which you've put in so much money to hire and train, and then losing it. You could have salvaged that situation if that call was analyzed and it was triggered, and that agent was reached out to and trained and approached. Those are the things which you can absolutely do and absolutely solve for.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been on, unfortunately, many customer service calls.
You've been on a lot of calls.
Well, I know. I mean, even customer service calls. I have to call and my bank or wherever. And if the person doesn't care and you can hear it, it's frustrating. It makes you not want to talk to them. Obviously, if they can't understand what you're saying, if they don't speak English well, for me, that's frustrating. But if they don't care, it makes me really angry, and I really don't like that, especially if I'm having a problem with the account. And I just, I want to talk to my manager. And, what if you have a customer service person that's having a really bad day and they take it out on callers? Or what if you see their emotional scoring is trending downwards? That could point out something's wrong with them in their personal life. Maybe you can intervene in a positive way. Hey, we noticed that your calls are getting more and more hostile for some reason. What's going on? How do we fix this? I mean, so there's a lot. I guess there's more than I can even imagine is involved.
There is a lot that can be achieved with these capabilities, and that's just in the contact center BPO world, right? And imagine the possibilities in robotics, in virtual assistants, in health tech. Imagine if you're able to predict a propensity for suicidal behavior. What would the impact for that be? And imagine a toy that understands the emotional state of mind of the child and reacts accordingly, and what that potential interaction could look like, right? So possibilities are endless, right? So we're pushing certain pilots around smart home, where you walk in and certainly you have the ability to be motion sensed and the lights go on based on a certain time, but can your mood be sensed? And if your mood is sensed, then can the lighting be adjusted, or a certain song can be recommended based on that? So it's the endless possibilities are all queuing around, all circling around the emotional state of mind, which is a big part of us being humans.
Yeah, you need one for when you come home and your wife's mad at you and you don't know why. You need to be able to whisper to it, "Oh, what's going on?"
Yeah, maybe that's a stretch.
Last couple of questions. Are there any stretch applications or programs that you think would be really amazing if you could get it to work? Maybe they're being piloted, maybe not. But what are some of the, as you've probably thought about this a lot more than most, but what are some of the most exciting possibilities you've conceived in this arena that you'd like to accomplish?
I think the exciting possibilities are around. I have to first say that all of these cases, use cases and KPIs that we deal with today and deliver towards today are exciting for us. And they're exciting because they solve a real business problem. They make an impact, they add value, they provide a competitive edge, and they make lives better. And, for all of those reasons, they're very exciting for us. Now, the things which are sort of more, towards the horizon is the stuff which I was talking about earlier, which is ability to deliver that read on the emotional state or the behavioral state or predict intent from a generalized, non-domain specific conversation interaction. And that opens up a whole new set of possibilities. But I also like to, see our machine interactions become more empathetic. And so I'd love to see Alexa understand emotions when I'm saying something to her. I think that would be fabulous for Alexa to do, or for that matter, Cortana or Google. And, I'd love to have other physical robot interactions be more human-like. And I think that would be a fantastic, experience to have. And, for a lot of people, seniors, for example, I've been looking into that space because I find that whole, the opportunity around investing in the senior management space fascinating. And one of the learnings I've had from that space is that one of the big challenges seniors have is one of the biggest challenges they have is loneliness. They just need somebody to talk to, and they need somebody to care for them. It's true, but for the most part, they just want to talk to someone. And if you imagine you could solve that through some of these capabilities. You can build a senior assistant device where that device is not only be able to understand you from the words, but also your emotional state of mind. I mean, that would be quite fascinating. And I think it's very possible. It's not that far out.
Yeah, what's funny I've noticed is I don't know what it was. There's one place I call and I always say, like, speak to an agent because I don't want to go through the automated stuff. And the automated voice goes, okay, I'll connect you to an agent. And it sounds to me as if the automated thing is saying, all right, okay, and even though I know it's automated, I still respond to it because of the emotion it seems like it gave me. So it's weird that, once these AI systems do display emotions, I know people will react to them, even if they don't want to, because they're just so programmed to react to the emotion in someone's voice or something's voice.
Absolutely. And this is definitely something, which, it's like someone mentioned to me that, why is it that people always are generally so rude to voice assistants? They won't talk to their kids like that, or they won't talk to, even other people like that. But most people and most conversations with virtual assistants are very unnatural. I mean, people yell or rude, and they're very abrupt. And it's because, you don't relate. You don't think that's one of us. But imagine, I mean, your example, imagine if that response back is more emotionally relevant and aware, you'd react differently.
Right, I would. Yeah, totally. I can feel myself influenced by it, whether I want to be or not. I can't help it, is what I've noticed. So I can see why emotions, the right ones, would really help, even if it comes from a machine.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, it's been a good call. What's the best way for people that are interested to follow up and get in touch? Any website references or, social media? How should people follow up if they're interested?
Yeah, there's a few different ways. You could definitely track what we do at our webpage, which is behavioralsignals.com, which is BEHAVIORAL signals.com. You could also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. My webpage is my first and the last name, RANAGUJRAL.com. And, I'd love to see how this conversation has triggered certain ideas in people. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to ideate out loud. So reach out to me, send me a message on Twitter or on my webpage, and I'd love to open up a conversation.
Well, very good. Well, Rana, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Bye.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.